Hi, my name's Hannah. You may know me from my Armstrong's YouTube channel. I am his girlfriend. I am the brains of the business, obviously.
The story begins inside a busy garage, filled with the sound of tools, metal clanking, and engines being worked on. This is the world of Matt Armstrong, a well-known car builder and YouTuber, who has built his reputation by buying damaged, broken, and written-off cars and bringing them back to life. For him, the garage is not just a workplace, it is his whole identity. Every corner has a project, every tool has a purpose, and every car has a story waiting to be finished. But on this particular day, something felt different. The air was heavier, and the usual energy in the workshop was replaced by curiosity and silence. Matt was standing still, looking at a garage door that was about to open. Behind that door was something he did not expect, something that would challenge the way he saw his own work and even his role in the garage. What he did not know was that this moment was not just about a new car or a new project. It was about a shift in power inside the workshop. For years, Matt had been the main builder, the one who made big decisions and led every project. His girlfriend, Hannah, was always there supporting him, helping with small tasks, filming, and learning along the way. But what seemed like a simple support role was slowly turning into something much bigger. She was watching, learning, and understanding more than anyone realized. And now, behind that garage door, was her own project. A project she built quietly, step by step, without trying to take attention or ask for approval. When the door finally opened, it was not just a reveal of a car. It was a reveal of a change in their entire dynamic. Matt thought he was the only one building something special. But he was about to realize that someone close to him had been building something too. This moment was not loud or dramatic in a traditional way, but it carried a deep emotional weight. It marked the beginning of a new chapter, where the teacher and student relationship inside the garage was no longer clear. What Matt saw would challenge his confidence, his control, and his understanding of what was happening in his own workshop. And from this moment onward, nothing in the garage would feel the same again. To understand what is happening in the garage, it is important to go back and see how things used to be. In the beginning, the structure was simple and clear. Matt Armstrong was the builder, the problem solver, and the creative mind behind the major car projects. He was known for taking cars that most people would call useless and turning them into something powerful and valuable again. His girlfriend Hannah was always part of the journey, but mostly in a supportive role. She helped with filming, basic mechanical tasks, and keeping the process organized. At that time, no one expected that she would one day step into the spotlight in a big way. But garages like this are not just about tools and machines. They are about learning. And when someone spends enough time around engines, repairs, and problem solving, they slowly start understanding more than just the basics. Anna was not just watching, she was absorbing everything. She saw how Matt approached problems, how he made decisions under pressure, and how he dealt with failures when things did not go as planned. While Matt was focused on finishing projects, she was also quietly building her own knowledge in the background. Over time, small changes began to appear. Hannah started helping more deeply in projects, not just as a helper, but as someone who understood what needed to be done. She was no longer just passing tools. She was suggesting ideas, checking systems, and understanding technical details. Matt did not see this as competition at first. For him, it was natural growth. He believed he was simply teaching someone he trusted. But the garage environment is intense. When you work daily with machines that require precision, patience, and problem solving, growth happens faster than expected. Hannah's confidence grew, and so did her skills. Without making it obvious, she started working on something of her own, not to compete, but to explore what she could do independently. This was the beginning of a silent shift. The structure that once had a clear leader and learner was slowly becoming something more balanced. And Matt, focused on his own big projects, did not fully realize how much things were changing right in front of him. While Matt Armstrong continued working on his major car projects, something important was happening in the background of the garage. Hannah was quietly working on her own build. It was not something rushed or done for attention. Instead, it was a careful and patient process. She spent time learning, planning, and solving problems step by step. What made this build different was not just the car itself, but the fact that it was done without relying heavily on Matt. For the first time, she was taking full control of a project from start to finish. In many ways, this build represented independence. It showed that she was no longer just a helper in someone else's story. She was creating her own. The interesting part is that no one outside the garage really knew what was happening. Even inside the workshop, it was not obvious at first. The project was kept low-key covered and worked on during times when Matt was focused elsewhere. This made the eventual reveal even more powerful because it came as a surprise, not an announcement. The car itself was not the most important part. What mattered was the process behind it. Every decision, every repair, and every improvement was a sign of growing skill and confidence. It showed that learning in a hands-on environment can lead to real mastery if someone stays consistent and focused. Hannah was proving that she was capable of building something that met the same level of quality as the main projects in the garage. When Matt finally saw the finished build, it created a moment of shock and realization. It was not just about a car looking good or running properly. It was about understanding that someone he had been guiding was now capable of standing on the same level. This was not a moment of conflict in a traditional sense, but more of a mental shift. The garage was no longer a one-person show. It had become a shared space where two builders could create independently. And that changed everything about how the future of the workshop would look. As soon as the situation in the garage started becoming visible, the audience reaction began to grow. In today's world of YouTube and social media, viewers do not just watch content, they become part of the story. Fans who followed Matt Armstrong for years were used to seeing him as the main builder, the one who takes risks and solves complex car problems. But now, there was something new happening that caught attention in a different way. Hannah was no longer just in the background. She was becoming part of the main story. This shift created curiosity. People started asking questions, like who was really leading the projects, and whether this change would affect the channel's direction. Some viewers were excited because they saw it as a refreshing change. They liked the idea of two builders working together, each with different styles. Others were unsure because they had grown used to Matt being the main focus. This mix of reactions is very common when a long-running content creator introduces a new dynamic. What made things even more interesting was the contrast in their styles. Matt is known for fast, bold, and sometimes risky decisions when working on cars. He often takes on challenges that others would avoid. Hannah, on the other hand, showed a more careful and detailed approach. She focused on precision, planning, and clean execution. This difference created a natural balance, but also created tension in how people interpreted their roles. As views, comments, and discussions increased, the garage stopped being just a private workspace. It became part of a larger online conversation. People were not only watching cars being built, they were watching a relationship dynamic, a learning process, and a shift in creative power. This is what makes modern YouTube content different from traditional media. The audience does not just see results, they see growth, competition, and personal evolution in real time. And in this case, the shutdown was not about conflict. It was about attention, shifting naturally to someone who had earned it through effort and time. For Matt Armstrong, the situation in the garage created a moment of reflection. At first, it might have looked like just another project reveal, but internally, it was something deeper. When you spend years being the main person responsible for building, fixing, and leading, it becomes part of your identity. You begin to see yourself as the go-to person for every challenge. So when someone close to you starts reaching the same level of skill and attention, it naturally creates a mental adjustment. Matt was not someone who disliked growth in others. In fact, much of his content is built on learning, teaching, and showing real progress. But this situation was different because it was happening so close to him. Inside the same workspace, and with someone he personally guided, that creates a unique emotional response. It is not jealousy or anger, it is realization. The realization that the role you thought was fixed is actually changing. He also had to face another truth. Teaching someone well means they can eventually match or even surpass you in certain areas. Every skill he shared, every mistake he explained, and every technique he demonstrated became part of Hannah's learning foundation. In a way, her growth was a reflection of his own influence. That is not something easy to ignore. This does not mean Matt lost control or status in the garage. Instead, it means the environment evolved. The workshop became more dynamic, with two capable builders contributing in different ways. For someone who is used to being the main driver of projects, this requires adjustment. It is less about competition and more about redefining roles. What makes this situation interesting is that it is not a downfall story. It is a transformation story. Matt is still building complex cars, still taking on major challenges, and still leading projects. But now, he is doing it in a space where he is no longer the only creative force. And that shift is what makes the story powerful, not because someone lost, but because the system around them grew beyond its original shape. As time passed, what started as a surprising moment in the garage slowly turned into a new working system. Instead of creating separation, the situation actually built a stronger partnership between Matt and Hannah. The garage was no longer defined by one person leading everything. Instead, it became a shared environment where both individuals contributed in different but valuable ways. This kind of partnership is rare in creative and technical spaces because it requires trust, patience, and mutual respect. Matt continued working on high-risk, complex car builds that required experience and fast decisions. These projects often involved damaged supercars, engine rebuilds, and major mechanical challenges. At the same time, Hannah began developing her own style of builds, focusing more on detailed work, clean engineering, and step-by-step problem-solving. Together, these two approaches created balance. One was fast and bold. The other was careful and precise. What made this partnership strong was not competition, but complementing strengths. Instead of trying to outperform each other, they unintentionally created a system where each person filled gaps the other might overlook. This made their overall output stronger and more interesting for viewers. The audience began to enjoy seeing two different perspectives on the same type of work. Over time, this also affected how content was made. Videos were no longer just about one person completing a build. They became more